Hi everybody, hope you're all okay. How you doing? You alright? Hope you're all keeping safe from the craziness that's going on outside. I know it's difficult at the moment, but there is light at the end of the tunnel now. I know that every day seems to mash into each other, every week seems to mash into each other. It's just mad, isn't it? But hopefully it won't be too much longer now before things start to get back to some sort of normality. So I've been really pleased with the amount of videos that I've been starting to upload to the YouTube channel now. Obviously, just trying to get a hang of how this all works and how it's going and when the best time to upload is and stuff like that. But to be honest, I'm not that bothered about how many views my videos gets. My channel is very much just going to be I talk into my camera. I upload it about the things that I'm interested in, and if anyone watches, then that's great. If people share the same interests as me, then that's great, really. I'm not too fussed about getting thousands of subscribers and all that sort of thing, but obviously would like to start to interact with people and stuff. So if you're interested in the same sort of things that I am, then let me know, and I can start to create some more content about things that people are interested in and stuff. So hopefully when the football season gets back up and running, that will give me quite a lot of content to talk about. Hopefully it won't be too much longer now, but we'll see how things go. With France shutting Ligue 1 down yesterday and Ligue 2 down yesterday, I think PSG got awarded the title, which was pretty much a given, wasn't it? With Marseille qualifying for the Champions League. I think Rennes did as well, and Lille maybe. Not sure. Have to double check that. But yeah, PSG awarded the title. Marseille finished second. Then obviously all the relegations were confirmed as well. There was no Lyon in the European places at all, which was a bit of an interesting one. I'm sure that their president, Jean-Michel Aulas, I think his name is, one of the most outspoken blokes in football. I'm sure he'll have something to say about the season finishing early. And I know that I think Toulouse are one of the teams that got relegated. I think that their board of directors are looking to take Ligue 1 to court as well. So it's going to have big ramifications, that relegation, and those final standings. They used the points per game method in the end, I believe, which is why PSG walked away with it, and which is why it ended how it did. So a lot of food for thought if if any of the other top leagues decide to use the points per game thing. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with the final standings. But it does look as if the Premier League looked like June the 8th they're going to get back up and running. There was a secret, I say there was a secret memo. Basically, Gary Neville on Twitter yesterday alluded to something to say that there is something that's going round all of the Premier League clubs at the moment, which is asking clubs to gear up for a return to football on June the 8th, which would be quite an interesting one, which gives it, what is it today? It's the 1st of May today. So it gives them 6 weeks to get ready, really. Back to training. I know that Bundesliga clubs have been back in training already. I know that Tebas and the Spanish FA are looking to get all of their players back up and running in the next couple of weeks. I think it might even be next week they're going to ask to get back to training. So it'll be great to see what happens. Hopefully we can get some sort of football in, as long as they abide to the health and safety rules, social distancing and all that stuff that we're accustomed to now, washing your hands, bleaching the balls and all that sort of thing. Not like that. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, enough about when football might return. The main topic of this video today is about Newcastle United and their proposed takeover and who they're looking to get in as a manager. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of months about Mike Ashley selling his stake in the club. He's obviously the owner of Newcastle United. Been nothing but a disaster since he's been there, really. He's not really invested any money. He's overseen a couple of relegations, backed probably the best manager they're ever going to have in Rafa Benitez with hardly any money at all. It looks as if all the fans' protests and stuff like that are going to come to fruition now, because there is talk that a Saudi Arabian consortium of investors fronted up by a businesswoman called Amanda Staveley, who's kind of like brokering this deal, is going to complete a £300 million takeover in the next couple of weeks. I know that people like Miguel Delaney, football journalist, and a couple of the others aren't too happy about this taking place due to, obviously Saudi Arabia's human rights record, stuff like that. But, there is a lot of talk coming out of the investment side of it that a massive amount of money is going to be invested into the club, which, will be music to Newcastle fans' ears. They've been... for their loyalty over the last couple of decades. They're one of the best supported clubs in England. They've been woefully underfunded, and like I say, even with Rafa Benitez, a guy who's been there and done a lot, to get him in the first place was a massive coup for the club to get him in as manager. And even when they got relegated, he stayed, he got them back up, and you would have thought that they'd have backed him quite heavily. But unfortunately, it didn't work out with Rafa, and he left the club in the summer, because he wasn't given assurances that he would get the funds needed to strengthen the playing squad as he wanted to. I think that with Rafa leaving, that's kind of the final straw with a lot of the Newcastle fans, because, the job he done last season, keeping that squad up, it wasn't really littered with the biggest amount of talent. By all means, there were a couple of decent players in that team, but nowhere near enough to kind of even challenge the top half. And Rafa kept them up comfortably in the end. I think they lost their first 5 or 6 in a row, and they were really in it, and you were thinking, oh dear, this is going to go badly again for Newcastle. But it looked as if he kept them up. He did a brilliant job, and then for him to leave on the eve of the new season, really, I think it was just a few days before. Well, no, not a few days. I think it was a couple of weeks before the season started, just before they were due to fly out to Asia to start their pre-season tour of China and Hong Kong and all around there. He left, and they brought in Steve Bruce. That was another thing that really infuriated all the Newcastle fans. Steve Bruce, although he's a local lad, A, he managed Sunderland, and B, he hasn't really got the best record and doesn't play the most attractive football in the world. And if you're a club that want to be moving forward and you want to be trying to challenge the top half to the top 8, top 6 maybe in a couple of years, is Steve Bruce the guy to do that? Possibly not. So, I know that at the beginning of this season, a lot of Newcastle fans, they were voting with their feet. They decided to boycott a couple of the games at St James's Park, and there were swathes of empty grey seats. Newcastle got such a fantastic fan base. I really rate their fans. I think they've got an excellent following, and for St James's Park to be kind of like a quarter empty at some points, I think that they were like 10,000-15,000 under capacity for a couple of games at the beginning of the season. There was a couple of people in the media like Pete Donaldson at the Football Ramble, who is a diehard Newcastle fan. He was very critical of the board and stuff like that. And these guys do have a big influence on fans. The Football Ramble, they get millions of listeners a year, so all it takes is a couple of thousand Newcastle fans to listen to that, and it'll make all the difference. So it does look as if the fans have got their own way. Mike Ashley's going to set up to this Saudi Arabian consortium. I was reading on, I think it was Twitter the other day, it might have been the Bleacher Report or something else, that they've actually got something like £260 billion worth of accessible money. I don't think that it's any one person's money. I think it's state-funded money, but it's kind of like an investment fund which this company that are buying Newcastle can dip into. So, when you're looking at 260 billion quid, that's more than all of the owners of the Premier League put together. It's absolutely mad money. It looks like it makes Roman Abramovich and people like that look like paupers compared. So it's a very exciting time for Newcastle fans. If they can get this purchase of the club over the line, then it should be very exciting times. Obviously, I know that you've got financial fair play that have kicked in now, and obviously they won't be able to do like a 2004 Chelsea Abramovich style investment where he just goes and buys all the best players in the Premier League, but there will at least be some investment. Like I say, I was looking at something like whoever gets the managerial job there is looking at 150 to 200 million pound immediate transfer funds to go and strengthen the team. So that brings me on to the main topic of the video, really. Well, obviously the Newcastle investment is the topic of the video, but the other thing I wanted to talk about was the managerial position at Newcastle, because like I say, Steve Bruce has been there. There is a lot of talk coming out of the club, well, not out of the club, but out of journalists and, the national football media, that it looks as if, if this takeover gets completed, that Mauricio Pochettino is the guy that the Saudis are going to look to as their kind of as their managerial appointment if and when this takeover gets completed. So, Pochettino, one of the highest regarded coaches in Europe. The job that he did at Spurs was an unbelievable job. He took them from kind of like nearly has-beens in the top 4 to every single season, you know, pushing for the league. You know, there was that one season where, you know, I think they won every single game at home in the Premier League. The last season at White Hart Lane, you know, he turned them into a really, really good side. You know, obviously got them to a Champions League final as well. Didn't quite win a trophy with them, but you know, there is a general consensus among everyone in Europe that he is one of the best. And you know, for Newcastle to get him would be an unbelievable achievement, really, because you know, it wasn't long ago he was being linked with Barcelona and Inter Milan and PSG jobs. You know, Man United, he's been constantly linked with taking over Solskjaer at Man United. So if they can convince him to get in there, that'll be an amazing appointment, and it's exactly the kind of statement of intent that the Saudi Arabian guys would want, you know, early doors. Be very harsh on Steve Bruce, don't get me wrong, you know, because I think Bruce has actually done an all right job there. You know, he's kind of like equaling the results that Rafa was getting there, arguably. But I think that, you know, with all takeovers, it's inevitable that eventually the new men will want their own guy in, because, you know, Steve Bruce is, you know, as reliable as he is, he's not going to be a Hollywood name, is he? And I think that with the kind of money that is rumoured to be going to be flying around that club in a couple of months' time, they want a big name, and Pochettino would be an amazing coup if they could get him in. Pochettino was filmed on I think it was the BT Sport Twitter account the other day with Jake Humphries and Darren Fletcher and a couple of the other ones, going through, you know, kind of like the Tottenham v Ajax game a couple of months ago, you know, for the Champions League semi-final. Sorry, it was last year, wasn't it? Yeah, he was talking about, you know, how he'd love to return to Spurs, and, you know, there is clearly a love for the English game there. You know, as a lot of you remember, he was at Southampton, did a brilliant job at Southampton, you know, solidified them, brought through a lot of youngsters. You know, we had Dusan Tadic, Sadio Mane, Morgan Schneiderlin, Virgil van Dijk, of course. You know, they had some really good players there. Then obviously when he moved on to Spurs, you know, his time at Spurs, he was saying in the interview the other day how much he loved it and how gutted he was. He wasn't able to secure a title, but you know, it does seem now that with the shortage of jobs that are around, it might be the perfect time for Newcastle to try and get him if this takeover does get completed. There is talk that, you know, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, 150 to 200 million pound in the transfer window he could be given. You know, obviously he's got his right hand man with him, Jesus Perez, who's his assistant manager. He's got Miguel D'Agostino, I think his name is as well, who's his goalkeeping coach. You've got Tony Jimenez as well, who's a coach there. So, you know, he would want his own men in. So would it be prudent if this takeover is completed to have such a big change halfway through the season? Personally, if Newcastle do stay clear of relegation, which it looks like they're going to be honest, you know, I'm not entirely sure where they are in the league, but they don't seem to be in the dogfight right now. I think they've steered clear of safety, but yeah, it'd be an amazing signing for them, really. I know that Jamie Carragher was saying the other day, you know, there is no better manager for them to go and get at the moment. So it would be brilliant. And, you know, as a Spurs fan myself, I would love to see Poch back in the league. You know, he did such a wonderful job for Tottenham. You know, the way he transformed us into kind of like one of the most exciting teams in Europe, really. You know, with the way he brought through Dele Alli and Harry Kane and, you know, all these amazing players, Harry Winks and stuff like that. It'd be brilliant to see him back in the Premier League. And yeah, I mean, bloody hell, if you're a Newcastle fan, you should start to get very excited if they can get the deal done, and if they can get Pochettino into the club. It'll be a massive statement of intent, and it'd put them straight into the top 6 race easily. And, you know, I know there's a lot of investment that's needed in the playing side because, you know, a lot of the players are aging now. You've got people like Joel Linton up front who can't score and stuff like that. So, you know, it would be a building job, but it'd be fantastic to see Poch back in the Premier League. And I think it'd be a huge, huge statement of intent for Newcastle if they can go and get him in and, you know, kick that new era off with a real bang. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. That's my thoughts on Pochettino and Newcastle and stuff like that, you know. And you know, if this takeover does get completed, so let's see what happens. You know, give me your thoughts in the comments below and stuff like that. You know, if you like this video, then put a like on it just so I can see what people are thinking of the content that I'm rolling out. And yeah, I'll speak to you over the weekend. If I don't speak to you in the weekend, then you know, whatever you're up to, hope you're enjoying it. Hope you have a good time. And yeah, keep your eye out for some football, because hopefully we're not too far away now. I reckon about 6 weeks, and we should start to have our brilliant sport back. So stay safe, keep healthy, and see you soon. Cheers, guys.